What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the stream. Um, Sin, Mark, New Mexico citizen. Let's see, is that Jose? Just want to do a quick stream tonight. I was trying to do a pre-recorded video, but I'm just terrible at talking to the camera when no one's there. But so I want to do a quick stream tonight just to talk about how consent is achieved in Washington State when you're recording. There's been some confusion in my videos in the past, and people say that Washington is a two-party consent state. Oftentimes, when people don't want to be recorded, they'll say Washington is a two-party consent state. You don't have my consent. When I first started recording in public and doing audit type videos back in 2000 and I guess 18, people would say Washington is a two-party consent state, and at the time, I didn't really know much about it. I was like, "Oh shit, maybe I'm doing something wrong here." I didn't really know um, what I was exactly doing. Well, I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know the ins and outs of it. But um, since I've become a little bit more educated, and I've gotten some comments lately about how it's illegal to record in Washington State, so I just want to do a quick video about it to let the viewers know how consent is obtained in Washington State when you're recording, and encourage you to look up, whatever it is in your own state so you can be educated as well. Um, Washington is interesting because I suppose technically you could say that it is a two-party consent state, although consent is not achieved in the traditional way or in the way which you would think it's achieved. It's not achieved by someone saying, I give my consent to be recorded. So, what I want to bring up for you on the screen here is the so called wiretapping law. Um, these links will be in the description as well, so you can look them up for yourself. If I'm not sure how well you can see this, let me see if I can make it bigger. Well, I'll just leave it like this and I'll read it. So, when most people say Washington is a two-party consent state, they're referring to the wiretapping law. And the so-called wiretapping law is what it's called colloquially, but this is what they're actually referring to as RCW 9.73.030. Intercepting, recording, or divulging private communication. Consent required. Exceptions. So I've actually been handed this printout of this law before at a government agency, to say I don't um, give you consent to record. Washington is a two-party consent state, and they actually print this exact thing that you see on the screen now, and they give it to me. Now, if you have a short attention span, which most people do nowadays, or you just engaged in, sort of a belligerent confirmation bias, then you're going to read this and you're going to say Washington's a two-party consent state. So I'm just going to take you through it really quickly, just to explain how consent is achieved in Washington State and where that derives from. Excuse me. So this particular state statute is divided into 5 sections. And most people who don't want to be recorded and cite this particular RCW, if they are referring to anything at all, which they're usually not, right? But if they heard somewhere, they're usually referring to this statute right here. And they're usually referring to section 1 and A and B, subsections A and B of section 1. So what this says here is that except as otherwise provided in this chapter, it shall be unlawful for any individual, partnership, corporation, association, or the state of Washington, its agents, agencies, and political subdivisions to intercept or record any A, private communication transmitted by telephone, telegraph, radio, or other device between two or more individuals, between points within or without a state by any device, electronic or otherwise, designed to record and transmit communications, regardless of how such a device is powered or actuated, without first obtaining the consent of all participants in the communication. Then it says under B, private conversation by any device, electronic or otherwise, designed to record or transmit such a conversation, regardless of how the device is powered, without first obtaining the consent of all persons engaged in the conversation. So if you're not wanting to be recorded and you're objecting to the recording and you're looking for something in the law and you read this, you probably stop right there because you've found something that supports your position. And so you think, okay, well, I don't need to read any further. It already says that it says in A and B, without first obtaining the consent of all persons engaged in the conversation. But if you go a little bit further down in the statute, you'll see it becomes a little bit more complex. So number 2 here is about the same thing about um, recording or intercepting communications during an emergency for the purposes of blackmail, bodily harm, and that type of thing. That's in number 2 right here. So you can read that for yourself. I'll put the link in the description so you can see, but just for the sake of brevity, I'll move on to number 3 and number 4. So here's number 3 and number 4 of the statute. And this is where it talks about how consent is actually obtained. And it's not exactly intuitive how consent is obtained, as I was saying before. So I'll go ahead and read it for you here. It says, where consent by all parties is needed pursuant to this chapter, consent shall be considered obtained whenever one party has announced to the other parties engaged in the communication or conversation in any reasonably effective manner that such communication or conversation is about to be recorded or transmitted, provided that if the conversation is to be recorded, that said announcement shall also be recorded. So what that basically means is you tell someone that you're recording, you're being recorded. And once you tell someone that they're being recorded, that's consent. Now you have their consent. Even though they haven't said, I consent to this recording, you've told them they're being recorded, and you've recorded that you've told them you're being recorded. So now you have their consent. Now, consent is even more easily achieved than it says in subsection 3. If we move down to subsection 4, I'll read further. An employee of any regularly published newspaper, magazine, wire service, radio station, or television station acting in the course of a bona fide news gathering duties on a full-time or contractual or part-time basis shall be deemed to have consent to record and divulge communications or conversations otherwise prohibited by this chapter if the consent is expressly given, or if the recording or transmitting device is readily apparent or obvious to the speaker. Withdrawal of consent after the communication has been made shall not prohibit any such employee of a newspaper, magazine, wire service, or radio or television station from divulging the communication or conversation. And then we have section 5 here, which it talks about custodial interrogations. So back to section 4, though. So what section 4 says is that consent is it can be obtained even easier by use of a readily apparent recording device. And what that looks like, it looks like this. This is a GoPro 9, and you can tell it's a readily apparent recording device because you can see it. I'm holding it up, and it's a camera. You can see it's going to have a picture right here. Here's another readily apparent recording device. It's a cell phone. This is a readily apparent recording device. Another one would be a camera, would be even more readily apparent. If it was a big news camera, that would be super readily apparent that it's a recording device. So if your recording device is readily apparent according to the state law, you don't even need the announcement to say you're being recorded because it's obvious you're being recorded. And so if you can see the device and it's readily apparent, then consent is achieved. So, in summary, consent is achieved in Washington state by announcing that you're recording to the person, and provided that the announcement is also recorded, or and or using a readily apparent recording device. And there is no withdraw of consent. As you can see, withdraw of consent after the communication has been made shall not prohibit an employee of a newspaper, magazine, wire service, or radio or television station from divulging the communication or conversation. So the reason that the law is written this way, and again, this is RCW 9.73.030, is in part because of the precedent from this case right here. If you watch auditing content, you might see references to this case made every now and then. This is Fordyce versus Seattle. It's basically a lawsuit against the city or with the city. And, you know, I think in this case, Fordyce was not granted certain relief, but let me go down to the conclusion here. So in the conclusion, you can see the motions for summary judgment are granted in part and denied in part in accordance with the foregoing. Plaintiff will have a declaratory judgment establishing that RCW 9.73.030, which is what we just went through, does not prohibit the videotaping or sound recording of conversations held in a public street within the hearing of persons not participating in the conversation by means of a readily apparent recording device. Judgment will be entered for defendants on plaintiff's claims for damages and injunctive relief, and so on. So essentially, this particular case further clarifies this particular law. And this is basically how consent is achieved in Washington state. There is no, I guess, long story short, there's no need for someone to say, I give you my consent to be recorded. As long as you tell them they're being recorded and you have a readily apparent or you have a readily apparent recording device, which readily apparent recording devices are pretty much um, everywhere nowadays. So, like I was saying, I've actually the law is difficult to understand, and especially if you have a short attention span or you're not particularly intelligent and you read the law and you just stop at number one, you found the information that you want, and so you say, "Oh, okay, I'm right. Washington is a two-party consent state. He can't record me." So you just stop reading. But um, when it comes to the law and hello, Rogue Nation, um, one thing that Rogue Nation actually says all the time is that the law is vast, and it's very difficult to know the law and be well versed in it because it's so vast. Um, however, it's important that you understand this stuff, especially if you're going to hand it out to somebody, because, like I was saying earlier, I've been in state agencies and they print this out for me and say I don't consent to being recorded, and they print this out and hand it to me. In other words, they print out the law saying that I have their consent to record, but they're giving it to me as a way to tell me I don't have their consent. They're handing me a paper that says I have their consent and telling me that I don't have their consent. That's how, you know, how blind they are to, like, what they're actually doing. And, that's kinda something that everybody does. I mean, usually when you read through the law or something, you would stop once you found something that supports your position, but I've learned doing this that you can't exactly do that because usually the parts of the law that support what we're doing are sometimes buried, or they're difficult to understand, or um, they're not right out there. And I mean, I just think it's funny. I was recently actually trespassed from the state of Washington Department of uh, the Department of Children and Family Services, and they printed this out. They printed this law out for me and told me that I didn't have their consent. And when I turned the law around, because of course I'm already familiar with this, um, mostly because I don't want to be arrested and thrown into a cage, is why I'm familiar. Even though they'll do it anyway. Um, but they actually printed this out for me and handed it to me. And when I turned it around and said, "It says on number 3 and 4 that you're giving consent," they're just like, they can't process that. That's just not um, that's not acceptable to their reality. So, um, just a quick primer for anybody who's recording in Washington State to read the entire law when these people tell you things. You just simply you cannot believe people straight out, and sometimes you can't even believe your own eyes straight out. Uh, Read the law, educate yourself. Uh, Remember that the people who have authority almost never know what they're talking about. Almost never. They do not know what they're talking about. They get by off of, and I'm talking about government agents and agencies here, and the police, of course. They get by off of, well, I was going to say they get by off of bullying people, but most of the time, bullying isn't even required because everyone is so ready to embrace their own slavery. So when a police officer asks somebody for their ID, for example, the ID is just given. And that's why you see New Mexico citizens says they count on everyone not knowing the law. Exactly. And they encounter everyone not knowing the law. And that's why when you see them interact with somebody like, say, Rogue Nation, for example, who is who is going to know the law, and he's not just going to comply, like, and get on his knees right away, they start to short circuit because every other person they've interacted with gets right on their knees and starts to, like, you know do the dirty work on their knees down there. And when you don't get on your knees on command, they become perplexed because every single person they interact with gets on their knees. So let me just read through the chat here really quick. That's really all I wanted to say. Let's start up here. Oop. Dad's for Service says, I'd have to announce if I was using my pin camera. I think that's probably the case. Oh, Rogue Nation says, I'm thinking I'm heading to LA for a month. That sounds interesting. I was actually, wondering if you're ever going to get over to the West Coast. I see you all over, of course. Georgia, I just watched your recent video where you were arrested in Georgia, and then they're going through all your shit. What a shame that is. Cajun Randy, um, grab it hard. Says smoke weed every day. I kind of stopped smoking weed because it kind of impacts my motivation a little bit. Um, my sixth sense says 80% of society has not a clue. This is why we end up in wars and are subject to authoritarian rule. I've said similar things, my sixth sense, and people always correct me and they say, oh, it's more than 80% or it's 90%. Back when I was doing my farmers market videos, I was saying 5% of people in the market understood. And I don't know if it's more or less, but it's a very low percentage. Um, it's mob rule. Rogue Nation is going to pass on the snow. I'm pretty much with that as well. I like I like the weather up here in Seattle. It doesn't really snow too often, but it's kind of cold and gray and foggy. Kind of, I guess what you would call gloomy. I kind of like that. You know, I like to wear raincoats. I like to wear boots and things like that. But looks like I'm going to be coming to Florida, so I'm gonna have to get used to something new. Rabbit Hard says most people don't have any other interaction with pigs other than from the boob tube. That's probably true. Dads for Service says it hides well, but since I'm in Oregon, and Oregon being a one-party consent state, I can use it any time I'd want to. I'd like in public, of course. Appreciate that, cops. Appreciate you watching the videos lately. The videos on Surveyor Raw are doing terrible. Uh, I haven't published a lot on the channel, and I'm publishing a lot of non-traditional content, a lot of COVID sites, and a lot of things like that. If you're in this stream right now and you're watching, I actually just started a new channel called Hunger, no, called Hungry Voyeur. Um, and it's kind of basically like watching people eat on the sidewalk with all this outdoor dining that's going on. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Silence Boy First Amendment. So it's kind of like that, except for it's real silence. It's not, we don't talk like Silence Boy does. But we do go out and record these outdoor dining establishments. It's not really the traditional auditing content. It's more like historical time capsule type of pieces about style and culture and how, of course, how people respond to a camera. Um, we record from the sidewalk, not inside the business. Sometimes the police are called. I think we've done 7 videos so far, and we've had the police called twice, and we've had the police show up once. And the police in these videos get the silent treatment. So we're really trying to kind of maintain the objective feel. It's really just about it's really more of like a objective observational piece about how people conduct themselves. Sometimes we get conversations from a table that's on the sidewalk or something like that, and people actually conversate in this awkward way about recording, and they kind of debate that, or they ignore the camera and they discuss what they're going to have to eat and things like this. So it's kind of interesting that way. And you'll see some of these videos coming out. If you want to subscribe to the channel, I'm not sure how searchable it is now, but it's called Hungry Voyeur. Hungry Voyeur. Let's go through here. Keith says, when cops don't get their way, They go to their do all violence. Cajun Randy says, "I wish some auditors to this L would come to LA for a month. No auditors here. This LA for a month." I used to live in Burien. I live in a society dumbed down, demoralized cowards who had zero guidance from a put together family unit. Some who experience this fractured family and upbringing figure it out, but most no, says my sixth sense. Uh, Burien, just south of Seattle. Yeah, I'm familiar with Burien. I filmed a couple COVID testing sites in Burien. You know, an interesting story that I could tell you guys, and I'm not sure, what kind of conspiracy this is or if it's even a conspiracy, but recently in Washington state, they just stopped requiring i- i- emissions for your car, where you get your car tested and make sure you can drive it on the road. When you used to go to these emissions places, you take your car in, and if your car couldn't pass emissions, they would give you a list of 3 or 4 different private businesses, and these are auto repair shops. And they would tell you, "Just go to this auto repair shop and get a diagnostic." You pay them 150 or $175, and you go into these diagnostic shops after not passing your emissions test, and you give them the paper that the state of Washington gave you, and you say, "I didn't pass my emissions test and I need this diagnostic service." And then they don't do anything. They take your car in there for 5 minutes and they come back out and they give you a slip of paper. Now you take that slip of paper back to the state of Washington and they waive your emissions requirement as long as you give this private business $150. Now, every state emissions facility has been shut down. They shut down every state emissions facility in 2020, the same year that COVID started up, and they turned those all into COVID-19 testing spots. I don't know what it is, but I think it's obviously a scam that the the state has an emissions testing process, and that you can just subvert that by giving your money to these 3 particular businesses. It seems like they're siphoning a ton of money off the top of there. And then it's very odd that, all the emissions just suddenly went away and every site has turned into a COVID testing site. A lot of them have turned into drive-through COVID testing sites because they were uh, emissions places before. So I just did one in Burien recently. Save the Human says, "Not Florida. We have an overwhelming amount of the best auditors. We need to keep you north." Yeah, I don't know. My wife doesn't want to stay here, and I've been here. I've been living in Seattle for 22 years. Hungry Voyeur. That's the link. I think could be. I'm sure. I trust New Mexico City. And that's probably it. Hungry Voyeur channel link. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, New Mexico Citizen. Thank you for subbing to that. Dads for Service. Thank you for subbing, Mark. This is my wife's channel, Record America. For those of you who don't know, Record America is my wife, and she's an auditor. She's a Brazilian. She recently got her citizenship, and we're going to not be putting we're not going to be putting any auditing content on Record America anymore. Um, we're going to be doing travel content and things like that. We're going to be getting the RV, and we'll be doing actually recording America in the sort of tourist or touring capacity. And she'll be recording all of her videos for Surveyor Raw, and she records a lot for Hungry Voyeur as well. So of the videos we've filmed so far for Hungry Voyeur, she's the camera person for all of them. Um, Thank you, JAFO. The world is becoming like the movie Idiocracy. Michael says supposedly their mandate was only until 2020 or whenever they shut down Marysville. I like going up to Marysville sometimes. It's a little break from the city. Marysville is, I don't know, maybe about 40 minutes north of Seattle, for those who don't know. Dads for Service says when you drive south, pass through the Dalles and give me a holler. Okay, yeah, we'll definitely be live streaming, and we'll be looking for people to meet up with. We're not sure if we're going to be filming or what the deal is, but um, we'll definitely be looking for people to meet up with and see what see what happens. New Mexico citizen says, I figured out that Taos County is making big money from selling public records. I'm going to do a records request for how much they make a year from them. That is a great idea because they want to gouge you for the records, in part probably because they don't want to give them to you and because they're just extortionist leeches by nature. Freedom first, safety second. Yeah, I think I might even move safety into third. I don't know what I'd put in its place, but Dad's first service says, I love it how she plays dumb when it comes to them saying HIPAA and how do you spell what's HIPAA. Yeah, Dad's first service, she knows what's going on, but she's not particularly um, articulate in English enough to cite the law and have them understand what she's talking about. So she just has a little workaround, but she definitely knows what's up. Any updates? Excuse me. Any updates on the assault? We've contacted the company, but this company is like a black hole. Like this curative company. If anyone doesn't know what Cops is talking about, there's an audit on Surveyor Raw right now. It's like 2, 3 videos back where it's called "Criminals Call the Cops to Violate Civil Rights," and a big giant guy comes out and he assaults my wife and pushes her from behind, and a whole bunch of belligerent employees who are hiding behind HIPAA to violate civil rights. And we've tried to contact this company, but it goes nowhere. Like this company, they're totally sucking money. They're like a government contractor for these COVID tests, and that's like the whole system that they got going on. So I did a revisit today of the site, and the guy wasn't there. We filmed the following 2 days after the assault, and the guy is no longer there. So we don't know if he's employed there or not. I will say that their behavior has improved. Today, I went and they did not call the cops, or the cops didn't show up. They were a little bit belligerent, but um, I, you probably wouldn't believe it if I told you the impact that we've had on these curative sites. These curative sites have actually added no photography signs just for me. I did the first curative site back in 2020 when the pandemic first started, and they were like no photography. They come out like waving their arms like one of those things at the gas station to advertise, "Ooh," with the blue suit. And the first couple of times they got educated over the phone, and I did some more. I did a curative site where they went to lunch and they left everyone's personal information exposed on a computer screen right through the window, and I filmed through the window and got all the information. Of course, I didn't publish the information. I redacted the private information because I don't expose people's personal information. That's what they do. So I just exposed that they exposed the information without exposing the information. And they put out signs saying that all photography is prohibited because of HIPAA, And I should probably do another video talking about HIPAA because I've actually read through the HIPAA law, the 1996 federal law. It's almost 200 pages of really dense wording. Has nothing to do with public photography or anything like that. So, but still, they have signs outside of their business saying no photography allowed because of HIPAA, and they added all these signs as a result of me visiting these sites. I think so. Now we keep coming back to these sites, and now they have a big privacy tent. Now they don't have people speak their personal information out loud anymore. This is just a new development that happened this week. Instead of having people speak their information out loud, they actually have them press their driver's license up against the glass or put a QR code, hold it up to the glass. And they added a privacy tent, they added privacy screens on the side windows. So, in that sense, we actually had a positive effect on impacting the way that they do business in terms of protecting their customers, or if you want to call them patients, private information. Yeah, and another thing is, of course, as you might expect, well, I don't want to say too much here, but I wanted to defend my wife against this guy, although he was rather impotent. She could have probably kicked his ass, but I was holding my baby at the time, and I wasn't really involved. Usually, when she's recording, I'm like observing from across the street or from a. Sometimes I pretend to be another customer, and I just kind of hang around and do things like that, um, or I'll try to get information that way. Marysville, yep. Sin says the Linwood Edmonds Admission Center has also been a warming center with showers for the homeless. That's interesting. They actually have a new warming center down here at the community center. No Bones Pressed is in Thurston. Welcome, First Capital Transparency. Nice to see you in here. Um, Zombie says, if you and Record America leave Seattle and Washington State, there won't be any others besides myself and I think two others. There'll be more. There'll be more. There's here in Washington State. There's News Now Seattle. There's Zombie. There's Emerson ICU. There's a channel called Auditing the USA. There's a channel called Crispidero. Crispidero, he's sort of non-active. Also, a shout out to the channel Surveillance Cameraman. Surveillance Cameraman filmed most of his videos in the University District. I started Cameras Everywhere after being inspired by Surveillance Cameraman in conjunction with auditing. So if you don't know who Surveillance Cameraman is, I don't think his videos are on YouTube anymore. I think they were all removed, and but people have pirated his videos a lot. But if you go to BitChute or another alternative platform, you can find Surveillance Cameraman 1 through 8. It's a brilliant series of videos that were filmed around the dawn of the smartphone, and he has a couple prepackaged responses that he says all the time, including things like "You seem confused" or "It's just a video." He says the same things all the time, and he has some legendary content. Surveillance Cameraman, check it out. I think if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're gonna absolutely love that. Love you pointing out that the camera woman asking for permission from everybody but you. Yeah, and you know, the truth is that she wasn't asking permission from everybody but me. She was not asking permission from everybody on scene, but she certainly wasn't asking the permission from me. Um, I was shocked you didn't do something about that fat boy. Yeah. Well, I mean, I really wanted to, but there's only so much I could do there. Um, and the assault when he like shoved her from behind, I actually wasn't even there. I was across the street. So if you like watch the video, you see her put her hand up like she's signaling to me. She's going, "Hey, what the this guy's like putting his hands on me." And I'm trying to come over as fast as I can, but I got the baby strapped on me. And so I'm pretty much like at a like speed walking over there. Of course, once I got over there, it was all done. But I'm gonna read a couple more, and then I'm gonna cut it off because I have a early day tomorrow. I gotta be up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. So New Mexico citizen says it was awesome when you showed up holding your daughter, playing as a random person who witnessed the crime. Yeah, that's usually how I do it. I, I don't really Record America doesn't want me interjecting in her videos when she's the camera woman, really, but I have a problem keeping out of it sometimes because I don't want her like getting bullied. So you'll actually see me come up sometimes as a patient, and I'll play the role of like a citizen who supports what she's doing, or at least understands. Like I'll I'll play a little coy, like, "But isn't it like a constitutional right what she's doing?" While they're calling the police or something like that. This is Rogan Michael having a conversation. Here in Washington, state reservations don't have public easements along the roads. Taz Taz News Tacoma. That's right, New Mexico citizen, and there's more. There's more. Um, Moorish Knowledge TV, who a lot of people dislike because he always interjects the racial angle into his videos. But anyway, he's from around here, or he spends time around here and in Portland. Although I think he's in California right now. But there is more. There's Taz. There's Moorish Knowledge TV. There's Questionable Authority. Exactly right. There's Extortion Everywhere. There's North Idaho Exposed. Now, North Idaho Exposed is, of course, in North Idaho, but he films a fair amount around Spokane and things like that. But definitely Questionable Authority. I can't believe I forgot about Questionable Authority. Questionable Authority is a great guy as well. I've met him on numerous occasions. I've had him over to my house. He's a really smart guy, um, a really nice guy, and just someone who's really chill to hang around with, and really good person from my judgment. I probably could generate some of those links, and I actually have generated some links to these channels before on my community page. Every time I generate a list of links for people, they always say like I'm working with the FBI or some dumb shit. But as if the FBI can't go on YouTube. But I can't. I just can't put the links in right now. I just don't have the time to look them up. But um, Moorish Knowledge TV, Questionable Authority, North Idaho Exposed, Taz News Tacoma, Extortion Everywhere, Emerson ICU, Auditing the USA, News Now Seattle, Record America, Surveyor Raw. All the Cameras Everywhere videos were filmed in Seattle while I was the cameraman. Your first video I saw was at the garbage transfer station in Troy. That's interesting, Michael. That video was filmed with a channel called It's Just a Camera. It's Just a Camera is a friend of mine, and he's also a really, really nice guy. He moved out of Seattle, and now he lives down in Texas, around San Padre Island. Uh, I think that in terms of Surveyor Raw, that was probably like my I don't know, like my 40th video on Surveyor Raw, and I the first 43 videos or 45 videos on Cameras Everywhere are me as the cameraman. Rogue Nation is stepping out. Have a good night, Rogue. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you. Appreciate your service. Appreciate everything you do for the community. And I know I look up to you. I know a lot of other people look up to you. So keep it going. Good night. Yeah, so that's probably it, guys. I'm gonna cut it off and I'm gonna go to sleep, or I'm at least gonna watch some TV. And thanks everybody for coming in. And I'll play out. Oh, let's see here. Nope, Save the Humans. So there's some links in the chat to these other channels. See if you can find them. See if you can subscribe. At some point, I'll put the links up on my community page, maybe. Um, but thank you very much, guys, for coming in. Thank you for listening about the law. If anybody just got in here, this stream ended up being a little longer than I thought, but this stream was originally about RCW 9.73.030, intercepting, recording, or divulging private communication, consent required, hyphen exceptions, and it's about how consent is obtained in Washington state. Check it out. Go back to the beginning if you're interested in how consent is obtained in Washington state. And yes, William, I see you, and I see that you said from Sydney, Australia. I wish you all the best out in Australia, William. Um, I've been watching what's going on out there, and it's honestly horrifying. So um, I wish you and your family all the best, and definitely you guys have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon.